Remember how I said whenever anybody approaches the government with very, very real concerns about the migrant crisis and mass immigration in the migrant hotels, and the government just turns around and says, "Shut up, racist"? It just happened again. Epping Hotel asylum case, what has the Court of Appeal decided and why? Temporary injunction has been set aside, but Council's challenge will still proceed to a trial. A temporary injunction that would have blocked asylum seekers from being housed at the Bell Hotel in Epping, Essex, has been overturned by the Court of Appeal. Here we explain what the court decided and its significance. Now, there's something very important. I'm going to see if the Guardian's going to be honest. Couldn't even make it through that, and see if they're going to talk about the judge behind this trial. What was the appeal about? Last week, after an application by Epping Forest District Council, a High Court judge ruled that asylum seekers could no longer be placed at the protest-hit Bell Hotel and gave its owners, Somani Hotels, until 12 September to rehouse the 138 remaining there. Mr Justice Eyre granted the injunction to remain in force until the case could be heard in full in October, after hearing EFDC's complaints that planning law had been breached in changing the site's use. Because this is the thing is the government's a giant bureaucratic machine and it will follow its own bureaucracy to the letter, even if it results in its own destruction, right? But basically, so whenever they've approached and says, hey, our children are being raped, our women are being assaulted, there's lots and lots of crime happening, houses are being broken into, we kind of don't like this, and it is placing the people in the area in great danger. The government said, shut up, racist. Right, so see any actual horrible things that are happening to the natives, the government doesn't care. They're like, that's, people are dying, girls are being raped. That's not grounds. Like that's essentially what they did. So what they had to do instead was they had to use the council's own planning permission law to say that when this hotel was built, it was not included in the planning permission that that is what this hotel could be used for. And planning permission is something that the council enforces fucking heavily. They will come in there with every single lawyer. They will send letters. They will have bailiffs out to your house. They will do everything to get you to bend the knee to them. So they basically had to use that government's own system like that against the government. But what the government's done, and this is the problem, the government's in control of the courts. That's the problem. See, when you are the arbitrator of all conflicts, you can therefore rule all conflicts in favour of yourself because you're the arbitrator. That's what happens when you've got the monopoly on decision making. But anyway, Somani Hotels challenged the decision at the Court of Appeal because they just make so much money. I don't care how many children are being raped. I love money. As did the Home Office, which has been refused permission by Eyre to intervene in the High Court case. What did the Court of Appeal decide and why? The three justices said both Somani Hotels and the Home Office, which it permitted to intervene in the case, could appeal against Eyre's decision and quash the temporary injunction in the meantime. Lord Justice Bean, sitting with Lady Justice Nicola Davies and Lord Justice Cobb, said Eyre had made a number of errors in principle. He said the judge's approach ignores the obvious consequence that the closure of one site means capacity needs to be identified elsewhere in the system. That's it. Or we could just put them on a plane, a little Ryanair. There you are, problem solved. Because they've no right to be here whatsoever. We could just do that, but we're not. Easiest thing in the world. Because I love how we have to consider the human rights of the migrants, but the human rights of the natives, fuck them. Right, that's the thing that's funny. We don't want to look bad. My brother in Christ, you're not Christ. Right, but you look bad. You look really, really bad. You look horrible. This is some war crime stuff. All of this is going to be on BBC Panorama in 40 years. You are going to go down in infamy in history for the shit that you did. This is war crime level stuff that you guys are doing. But anyway, other reasons given for overturning the interim relief were that Eyre should not have given weight in his judgment to protest. But I mean, what's the point of protest then? Protests are supposed to bring about change. They're supposed to be the voice of the unheard. People are demanding, this is what we want, and we will protest until we get it. The government is ignoring us, even though its existence is supposed to be to the benefit of the people. If that's not what protests are for, then what are they for? Because there's an alternative to protest. One that makes you very, very nervous. But anyway, including unlawful protests, I love that phrase, unlawful protests, taking place outside the hotel, as that could incentivise further protests and further lawlessness. Lawlessness, which is the natives saying, stop raping our kids. That lawlessness. What horrible lawlessness. Dads don't want their daughters being raped. What horrible fucking lawlessness. The judges said this risk outweighed Epping residents' fear of crime. We don't want further lawlessness, so instead we're going to keep the status quo, which promotes lawlessness, but it's fine because it's the migrants doing the lawlessness. Oh my god. Do they even proofread these before they send them out? They also cited the fact that the Bell Hotel had been used to house asylum seekers since 2020 without EFDC taking any enforcement action. Nah, judges don't get to do that. I was doing X for so many years and only now you have a problem. Well, no, sorry. Sorry, courts, you don't get to fucking do that. You pull that shit all the time. What is the significance of the decision? If the Court of Appeal had upheld the temporary injunction, it would not only have affected the situation in Epping, but other councils had indicated they would consider their own legal challenges to prevent hotels in their area being used to house asylum seekers. Ear had made plain that his decision was specific to the narrow dispute being discussed, but the Court of Appeal judgment said that interim relief may incentivise local planning authorities who wish to remove asylum accommodation from their area to apply to the court urgently before capacity elsewhere in the system becomes exhausted. The potential cumulative impact of such ad hoc applications was a material consideration that was not considered by the judge. Tough titty. Tough fucking titty. Tough titty. If the government doesn't have systems in place and has to yet again rely on the private sector despite the enormous amount of money that it steals with us through taxes, then that's the government's fucking problem to solve. That's their issue. It's not the natives' issue to fucking solve. We've paid them enough of our fucking taxes. Solve the fucking issue. Instead, it's causing issues with our taxes. Basically, we're funding the destruction of our own nation. What does it mean for the policy of housing asylum seekers in hotels? Although the temporary injunction was set aside, EFDC's challenge to the Bell Hotel being used to house asylum seekers will still proceed to a trial, scheduled for October. Should EFDC be successful, the High Court could then decide that asylum seekers should be removed from the Bell Hotel. The Court of Appeal judges were clear in stating that the case is not concerned with the merits of government policy in relation to the provision of accommodation for asylum seekers in hotels or otherwise. Shut up. What has the political reaction been? The appeal court ruling has recharged tensions over the use of hotels to house asylum seekers. The Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch said the judgment was a setback but not the end and urged councils to keep going with legal actions against asylum accommodation, which they definitely should do. Along with other senior Tories, Badenoch accused Labour of prioritising the rights of illegal immigrants over local residents, which it in fact has been doing. And she claimed that her party had a plan to end the asylum hotel scourge once and for all. You had 15 fucking years, Tories, shut up. Despite the number of asylum seekers being housed in hotels having risen dramatically under the last Conservative government. The Reform UK leader Nigel Farage went further, saying the government has used the ECHR against the people of Epping. Illegal migrants have more rights than British people under Starmer. The ruling is likely to fuel his attacks on Labour and the Tories. In contrast, the Labour government has kept its response measured while defending its record, saying the ruling would help avoid a return to the chaos of recent years, as opposed to fucking when, mate. Angela Ego, a Home Office minister, said, the government will close all hotels by the end of this parliament. No, you will not. No, you will not. Either that or you'll build them nice fancy houses. We appealed this judgment so hotels like the Bell can be exited in a controlled and orderly way. Could this set a precedent for future legal challenges? The Court of Appeal stressed that the decision was limited to interim relief, but the case could influence how future cases are approached. Local Conservative authorities considering their own legal actions may face a higher bar when seeking emergency injunctions to stop hotels being used for asylum accommodation. Councils may not be able to rely on public protest or local opposition to try to sway the courts, especially when where the accommodation has been in place for some time. Yeah, two of the judges are actually part of Labour groups. They're part of Labour, they're for the government. They're part of the Labour government. Because they're actually, one of them's part of a socialist group, the other one is part of a Labour think tank. So basically, Labour put its own judges into the appeal to overturn the ruling. Otherwise, Labour, God forbid, might actually have to fix the problem or actually fucking deport them. So like I said, whenever you have the monopoly on arbitration, you can just rule everything in your favour forever.